What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name is Victoria and in today's video we'll be drafting a Milkmaid top. So here are my tools and my pattern paper, and these are the measurements you'll be needing for this top. I'll begin by marking 1 inch downwards from the top of my pattern paper. I'll go ahead to square that point across and that will become my shoulder line. And from this line I'll be taking all my vertical measurements. Now this part of the pattern paper will serve as my center front, and when cutting onto fabric it will be cut on a fold, so I'm just indicating that. Now it's time to start taking all my vertical measurements starting from the shoulder line, and the first measurement I'll be taking is my shoulder to bust measurement. So measure from your shoulder to bust and mark that point across. Now I'll just go in with my ruler to square out that point and label what it stands for. The next measurement to take will be from the shoulder to under bust. I'll mark that point across and then go in with my ruler to square it out. So there's my under bust line. Now at this point you can go ahead to measure your shoulder to waist and mark out your waistline. But the measurement I'll be taking now is the full length of the top, and I want mine to be 21 inches. I'll be adding 2 inches to that for hemming allowance, making it 23. So placing my tape at the shoulder line, I'll go ahead to mark that point across. I'll be going in with my ruler to square it out, and that will become my full length. And from there I'll be going down by 2 inches, which is the hemming allowance. So now that I'm done with that, it's time to work on the neckline and the shoulder slope. So the neckline is obviously temporary because this is an off shoulder top. So I'm just going ahead to create a simple round neckline. I'm connecting the points together using my French curve. And when I'm done with the neckline, I'll be moving on to create the shoulder slope. And I'll begin by marking half of my across shoulder measurement along the shoulder line. For me it's 8 inches, and from that point I'll be going down by 1 inch before connecting it to the neck in a slant to give the shoulder slope. Next, I'll be creating the chest line by coming up from the bust line by 2 inches. You can determine your chest line by dividing your bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5 and then mark that point downwards from the shoulder line. And for me, it's the same thing as going up 2 inches from my bust line. So now I'm just squaring out that point across, and there's my chest line. And on this line I'll be marking 1/4 of my bust circumference. So my bust circumference divided by 4 is 10 inches, which is what I'm marking on the chest line. Next I'll move on to connect the shoulder slope to the chest line in order to create my armhole. So I'm just going in with my ruler to connect the end of that slanted line to the chest line like so. And then I'll go ahead to find the midpoint of that line, and from that midpoint I'll be going in by 3/4 of an inch. And once that's done, I'll go ahead to connect these 3 points using my French curve. So now that I'm done with the armhole, it's time to work on the dart, and this is where I realized I had no waistline. And so I'll be marking my shoulder to waist measurement at 17 inches, and then I'll square out that point to get my waistline. And after that I'll be moving on to create my dart, and I'll start by marking half of my bust span measurement, which is my nipple to nipple measurement. So my bust span measurement is 8 inches divided by 2, that's 4 inches, and I'll be marking that point from the bust line all the way down. And when I'm done marking, I'll proceed to connect all these points together in a straight line. After that, I'll go ahead to create the dart along the waistline by marking 1/2 inch on both sides of that line. And then from the bust line I'll be coming down by 1 inch along that line, that vertical line, after which I'll go on to connect all these points with my ruler. So I'm connecting all the points together like so to create my front dart. Now along the hem I'll be marking 1/2 inch on both sides of that line. You don't have to do this, you can leave the dart as it is, but I like to take in a bit more so it can fit better. I'll just go ahead to connect it to the waistline like so, and that's it. So now that I'm done with the dart, it's time to insert my horizontal measurements divided by 4. I already marked my bust circumference divided by 4 on the chest line, so now I'll be marking my waist circumference divided by 4 on the waistline. And to that measurement I'll be adding 1 inch that will be taken in for the dart. At the hemline, I'll simply be adding 1 inch to my original waistline. I'll mark that point, and just like I did on the waistline, I'll be adding the 1 inch that will be taken in for the darts. Now it's time to connect all these points together. So going in with my ruler, I'll be connecting the waistline to the chest line and then to the hemline. I'll go ahead to add my side seam allowance, and I'm using 1 inch for that. I'll connect these as well and then indicate that this is the front pattern. So because this top is going to be an off shoulder, you have to decide where you want it to begin. For me, I wanted to start 1.5 inches above the chest line, and that's because I don't want any cleavage. But you can go up by 1 inch or even maintain the chest line as it is, especially if you're not busty. Like I said, I'll be going up by 1.5 inch from the chest line, and I'm marking that point along the center front and the armhole. And then I'll go in with my ruler to connect the 2 points together. So we're going to be taking out every part above the horizontal line I just drew because we won't be needing that. So I'll just go in with my scissors to cut through all the lines I'll be needing. And I'm going to pause here for now with the front pattern because I want to use this to trace out the back. So I place the front pattern to a fresh pattern paper that I'll be using for the back. And as you can see, I'm not pinning right at the end of the pattern paper because I left 1 inch for my zipper allowance. So this part right here will be used for my zipper. So now I'll go ahead to cut out the excess at the top and then transfer all my important points on both sides before finally cutting out the back pattern using the front as a template. And when I'm all done, I'll take out the front and then go on to draw out all the horizontal lines that were originally on the front pattern. So just like the front, here's the full length, the waistline, under bust line, and the chest line. And of course the center back, and we'll be cutting out 2 pieces using this pattern. I'll go ahead to start creating the dart for the back, and just like the front, I'll be marking half of my bust span measurements, but this time I'll be starting from the chest line. Using my ruler, I'll connect all these points together, and along the waistline I'll be marking half an inch on both sides of that line. Then from the chest line, I'll be coming down by 1 inch before going in again with my ruler to connect all these points together like so, and that will be it for the back pattern. I'm going to set this aside and then go back to the front pattern. Now for the front, what's left to do is to create the cup. And in order to do that, the first thing I'll be doing is to go up from the under bust line along the center front by 1 inch. I'll go in with my French curve to connect that point back into the under bust line to meet the darts. Once that's done, I'll be marking half of my bust span measurement on the other side towards the armhole. So as you can see, I'm placing my tape from that line right there, and I'm just marking that point along the bust line. Then I'll go in with my French curve again to connect that point to the under bust line and all the way up towards the armhole. And that's it. So this part right here will be the cup. You can decide to leave the neck of the cup straight, or you can create a sweetheart neck or any other neck design you want. So you can go down by half an inch or 1 inch and just curve that neck like so. So right now I'll go ahead to cut out the cup from the rest of the pattern. I'll also be closing up the darts because I don't want any visible darts on this top. I'll just go in with my scissors to open it up and then put it back together using a tape. So I'll go ahead to tape it down and make sure it's secured, and then I'll go ahead to indicate that my center front will be cut on a fold so I don't forget. Once that's done, I'll be moving back to the cup. So I'll turn this over to the wrong side, and then I'm going to measure the width of this cup, and when I measured I had 8 inches. So I plan to slash this cup into 5 different parts. You can do more or less depending on how full you want the gathers to be. And 8 divided by 5 is 1.6. So I'll be marking 1.6 inches all the way across. And when I'm done marking, I'll use my ruler to draw lines across these points. And when I'm done with that, I'll go ahead to number them 1 to 5. Be sure to start numbering from the center front. And once they are all numbered, I'll be going in with my scissors to cut through the lines. And after cutting, I'll be left with 5 different pieces. I'll go on to spread these on a fresh pattern paper, and I'll be spreading them 1.5 inches apart. You can use more or less if you want. So after marking 1.5, I'll be taping them down one after the other, and when I'm all done, I'll go on to trace around this to form a new cup. So I'm going in with my marker and I'm just drawing around. As you can see, I'll go ahead to cut around the cup and then take out the slashed lines. So right here is the new cup. This is what will be gathered to fit into the rest of the top. And I'll be cutting out 2 separate pieces using this pattern. So because I closed up the darts for the front pattern, I'll be closing up the darts for the back pattern as well. So I'm just going to cut the dart open and tape it back together. So these are the 3 patterns that I'll be using for this project. In my next tutorial, I'll be showing you how to put these pieces together. So this is the end of this tutorial. If you stayed to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you in my next video.